Three, two, one. Welcome to the Old Brother Podcast. I'm your host, Dan Smith. Alongside me, as always, my brother from the same mother, Mike Smith.
You're right beside me. That's weird.
Oh, man, we should be masking, So, anyways, yeah, you're on a little vacay down here.
Yeah.
And we thought we would do a podcast episode while you were here.
Yeah, and we're going to do Tetris. So, anyways, what do you think about Tetris?
Did you forget how to do this?
So
you're out of your element.
Yeah, I'm out of my element.
You're out of your element.
I'm like a sidekick now, not a co-host.
It's just very bizarre. So we did a first look on this.
Yeah.
Right. And you knew the story behind this.
I did.
To a degree.
We'll get into it in a minute.
So it started streaming on Apple TV,
Friday.
March 31st, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so straight to Apple TV.
Mm-hmm.
And again, Taron Egerton stars in this. Who else do we know that's in this?
I think he's the only recognizable,
I think so.
Except for Toby Jones.
Yeah, Toby Jones, right.
Stein, was it? Mr. Stein,
right?
Or something like
that. It's directed by John S. Baird, written by Noah Pink, and executive producers are actually Taron Egerton's character Hank.
Oh, okay.
Not Hank, but Hank.
Hank with an E.
Yeah, Hank Alexi, who was the creator of Tetris.
Correct.
Right, and then his wife, his daughter Maya was Hank's daughter. Right, Maya was Hank's daughter.
Okay.
They were credited as executive producers on the film too. So that led me to think, okay, so they're closely scrutinizing this and the portrayal of it and everything. But at first, I thought it was a little slow off the start, and I wasn't sure I was buying into Taron's depiction or just his choice of accent, because I didn't know much about. I haven't seen videos of the actual guy,
right?
But as it went on, I'd say probably.
Well, didn't they have some? They had photos at the end.
They did. But that's what I mean. I didn't beforehand. I had no frame of reference.
Yeah. And he was playing it very, he had this sort of Hank accent that he was doing.
It was
really
weird
because
he's living in Japan.
Porn star mustache that he had.
I know, but that it was
80s. It was 88.
So he was living in Japan at the time, and one thing that bothered me is that when we talked about this in the first look, I said how this was a block wood game.
Yeah.
And you saw it, but just briefly.
Right.
And I wish they showed that a little more.
Where I really started to get more engaged was the Game Boy reveal.
Yeah.
I thought they did that pretty well.
And that's probably how it's handled.
Right.
You're the third person to see this. Mm-hmm. There were some things in the movie I don't know, that I questioned. But, you talk about your reactions, and I'll get back to mine.
Well, I mean, it's not so much about, the way the movie played out. There were certain aspects of it. One thing I thought was funny is my Alexa device kept going off. Every time they were talking about Alexi, the guy that invented it, it would go off. But the Game Boy reveal, the packaging of it and that whole thing where it was originally packaged with Mario. And he's like, well, if you want a bunch of kids to play it, great. But, so that was, you just realize how significant that moment was, that decision.
Right.
Assuming that was how it went down. Again, I thought it was interesting at the very beginning, based on a true story, because I know how much you like that. I know.
And I question, there's things that I definitely question. I don't think Alexei left Russia. I think he still lives in Russia.
Yeah, and there's this, so when Egerton goes to Moscow,
right, he's trying to get the rights.
He's trying to get the rights.
And there's like three different parties.
And he's totally determined, everything's riding on this. He's got a wife and his house and his kid and all of this. And so he goes over there and he gets connected with, you see that tourists are getting accosted by translators to sell their services and things like this. So he gets hooked up with this woman who's a translator.
Right.
And she ends up assisting him. I thought that was very between us, this old reference of Joe McDoke. Like it was pretty Joe McDope where that storyline was going. You don't think so?
Not for me.
It just was too obvious. Kind of like.
And what was the obvious thing?
Kind of like Prime and Logan Paul on WrestleMania.
Well, if you go to Russia and you stay someplace,
right,
they are recording you.
Oh yeah, sure.
I mean,
of course,
you're being videotaped every step.
Right.
Of the way.
Yeah, it's just her interest in it and the level of support that she was giving him, and I don't know, there's something about it was just fishy. I just didn't really kind of buy into that. So when the reveal was that, in spoiler alert, that she was a KGB agent, we're like, yeah, okay, well of course she is.
And then there's this other guy. See, that's the other thing too. He was kind of willy-nilly over there in Moscow.
Mm-hmm.
Now this is back during the Cold War. People weren't visiting Moscow.
And he was unknowingly he was pitted against these couple of other guys
that were supposedly deep pockets, Microsoft, which I remember the company. And his company, Bulletproof Software, I believe, is still in business.
Really?
Yeah, I've seen that name recently, so it must be on a game. But a lot of the story is him traveling here, him traveling there, trying to get the rights. Everybody's trying to undercut each other to get the rights for the game.
Mm-hmm.
And it turned out that this Mark Stein, and he's a real person. I don't know if the Maxwells were real.
Yeah. No, they were.
They were, okay.
Right, because he was the head of Microsoft and then his son.
Okay, right.
Yeah, because they're in the end credits. Real, right.
Yeah.
And he went like bankrupt or something.
Yeah,
and his son went on trial. It was a whole big thing,
right? And his son wound up, I think, getting a fine. I don't think he even got jail time for it, which is in Russia surprising.
Yeah, it's Egerton's Hank. What's his last name? Hank. What is it?
I should know it.
You should know it.
Yeah,
his wife, and they're trying to show this other storyline, which is like him and his family. Right,
and he has 3 daughters.
No, it's just one. It's just one.
Just
no, it's two. It's two kids.
Yeah, there was another daughter.
But that's weird though, because it really ends up only being focused on the one
at the end with the pageant.
She's got a recital, and he's over in Moscow saying, "I'll be home for your recital," and this and that. Which, of course, he's going to miss.
Doesn't make it
right. But it took until that concert fight between his wife. I can't think of her name either, but they had a fight about the fact that he didn't make the concert.
Right. He's
like, I just lost.
We're gonna lose the house.
Right, everything.
Right.
And you're give me shit about a concert.
Right. And when she walked in, he was literally
smashing that phone. Right.
Which I could, And again, these are the moments we don't know.
Right. Correct. Correct. But I didn't really care about that relationship until that moment.
I didn't either.
It took until then. For that.
All the other players I pretty much knew. Mark Stein. In fact, they showed him at the end, and there was a quote from him saying his biggest regret in life was not getting Tetris.
That's right, yeah.
Which he actually did get the rights first.
Yeah.
He got the computer rights.
Mm-hmm.
When we did the preview,
the first
held up and I said, this is going to be part of the story. I said, probably 3/4 of the way in, and I was right.
Uh-huh.
But they barely touched on it, and I'll explain what I mean. Here they all fighting over rights, right, to put it on the Nintendo.
Mm-hmm.
And meanwhile, Atari starts up a new software company I always called them Tengen, but in the movie they said Tengen.
Mm-hmm.
It's Tengen.
Mm-hmm.
So when Tetris first came to the NES, there was 2 versions. There was the licensed version, and then there was this Tengen version. And it was a little different because, the Nintendo version had the blocks separate, like on the Game Boy. You could see it's 4 blocks.
Mm-hmm.
And the computer version, and also the version that Atari just decided to use, it didn't have the blocks separated. They were just like an L shape, a square, like that. So the big thing about that was they finally went to court. Nintendo takes Atari to court and wins.
Mm-hmm.
And while they were in court, you couldn't get Tengen Tetris. You had to pay over $100 to get just one game. And then they lost the case, and all those cartridges wound up being, out in the desert with ET.
Yeah.
So they just glossed over that. Mm-hmm. Like they said, no, Atari's publishing it right now, and he's like, what? Mm-hmm. And he gets in a plane and flies to find out what's going on, because Stein had the agreement, and then when he met with the Russian government, who was literally gonna give it a thumbs up or a thumbs down, he offered way more money, Hank, than the other people, and Stein was like, I already got the rights, what are you talking about? This was Hank's going. Hank said, you got to change the contract, and you got to describe what a computer is. Has to have a keyboard, must have a mouse,
right,
all these things. Therefore it didn't count, and they rewrote his contract, and they said, you sign it or you get nothing.
Yeah, it was like nobody had the rights,
right?
At one point
it was up in the air.
It was totally up in the air,
and that's when Atari swooped in.
Now, do you think there was this other Moscow, like KGB goon or whoever he was?
I don't know.
Was that a real?
I don't think that. I think
this one other guy that was like in it for himself,
right? And he was trying to get money from the rich people, and he made a deal, so they were going to pay $1 million for the rights. Mm-hmm. Meanwhile, Hank offered him, it was going to be up over $5 million. Yeah. Towards the end, they were just negotiating for handheld rights, because they kind of figured out, well, Stein's got the rights for computers, so we're done there. So that really it was the Game Boy, is what made Tetris a hit. But I did think the KGB, and I thought there was a lot of espionage stuff that
I think they were trying to show they were trying to depict the Soviet Union at that time.
Yeah.
88, a lot of change. And like Mikhail Gorbachev was in it.
That was silly.
That was pretty silly.
Although it did go to Gorbachev. I know it did.
A lot thinner than the actual Gorbachev. But
I think shorter.
But I don't think they really, however, significant they were trying to make that part of the story, I don't think they really, it was very ancillary, kind of just on the periphery. Like showing people in bread lines and things like that. It was very sort of, I just didn't.
I think there was a half
think
hour.
It was a good depiction.
No, wait, this was longer than I thought. I thought it was 90 minutes.
It was just almost 2 hours.
Yeah, and I think they could have cut it to 90 minutes and told a tighter story.
And I don't see this again. It's streaming, probably the perfect idea, because I just couldn't see this holding up in the theater.
Yeah.
Or doing much money.
We've debated this because we're not going to know.
No.
And it's out.
Yeah.
I wonder how many people have seen it so far, because
it certainly wouldn't be like Tetris, which has over 500 million.
500 million
sold.
Probably more.
What did you think about, they did this thing with the transitional device between scenes, like establishing shots, and they were like an 8-bit. So you'd see like their apartment building from outside. It was,
they didn't need
okay.
That.
Yeah,
that was for video game fans,
right?
But I think they were trying to appeal to two audiences: the video game people, and the people that never played Tetris.
It was good. I mean, it was all right. I mean, again, if you have Apple TV, fine.
Right.
It's not something I would like subscribe for.
I agree.
And it wouldn't get me to the theater.
Yeah. Although I probably would have
gone to the theater
because it's Tetris.
Yeah.
And like I said, it's the most addictive game, and I still have Tetris in my top 3 video games of all time.
Well, you on the trip, you brought along a special gift for me, which was I'm now the proud owner of a Nintendo Switch.
Yes.
And
we can play.
I was playing Tetris this morning.
Tetris 100 or regular Tetris?
You were catching some Z's, regular Tetris.
Yeah.
I didn't do half bad. Yeah. And we were in an arcade today, too, trying to relive some of those memories. But there was nothing. There was
giants.
We did play a huge Space Invaders, which was kind of cool.
And you had like the shoot with the big gun.
So this is, what is this?
It's a mixed bag, I think.
Yeah.
I think, people that know the story or want to know the story or are just there's professional Tetris players.
Mm-hmm.
Like I said on one of the stream on the first look, I got somebody, and I think it was Rexer, sent me a copy of the finals, and you should have seen. I mean, the things are just whipping down, and they're like getting the perfect Tetrises.
So what's the biggest criticism?
For me, there was elements that I'm not sure that were embellished or not. And then overall, I think it was too long. It was a little too long.
Yeah.
We didn't need to see all the flights going across.
Yeah.
It was like you were on a JetBlue looking at the map.
It was the animations, and again, that 8-bit kind of technology, that look they were trying to give it. Yeah, it was like they were just trying to tell too many stories in one, I think.
Yeah.
Too.
Like, keep the family out of it. And have him just doing it. And maybe that was a big part of the story that we don't know. And, maybe when Hank sat down.
Well, and I think it was 2014. I think his daughter now is the head of the company.
I don't know if
I
don't think it's bulletproof.
I don't know if
anymore.
it's that. Yeah. Right. And
I think he sold bulletproof.
I didn't know there was the Tetris company.
Yeah.
I didn't know about that. But I saw there was footage at the end. Again, if you watch this and you see the end credits, they do show some of the actual. I was amazed they actually had videotape of Hank in Moscow with Alexei and everything. And that was pretty interesting. Right. I would have liked to have seen more of that.
And from what I know, Alexei couldn't make any money off it because he worked for the government. And it's communism, and I've been to China several times.
And I just don't think that they, as high as those stakes probably were at that point, even though it's over something like a video game, I don't think it really resonated.
Yeah, it didn't.
Right, it wasn't dramatic enough. No, it didn't.
But if you're a Tetris fan,
that's a lukewarm review of
lukewarm.
Tetris.
It's
lukewarm. At best. All right, so nothing else to say about this one.
And there was only a few things. I'm looking over at your notes, and there's only a few things that I didn't know. I knew most of the story.
Yeah.
So that, when you know what's coming, but if it's based on something real life and you know what happened, like, they made the OJ trial or whatever, and they redid it.
Again, if you have Apple TV,
check it out.
I would definitely watch it.
Yeah.
It was enjoyable, but again, I wouldn't pay money for it.
And if you're a huge Tetris fan, I would say watch
if you're a game fan, sure.
So,
well, there's your lukewarm review of Tetris, folks.
It's like here, right?
It's barely there. Yeah, it's more like this.
Yours is there. Mine's even.
Yeah. All right, well, that's going to do it for another episode of the Oh Brother Podcast. I've been your host, Dan Smith. Alongside me, as always, my brother from the same mother, Mike Smith.
He's physical.
And we will see you next time.
He's a real person. Bye, everyone.